You know what the most dangerous weapon in the world is? It's not money. It's not power. It's not even influence. The most dangerous weapon you possess is something so simple, so accessible, that most people completely underestimate it. It's your silence. Your strategic, intentional, powerful silence. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly why the people who doubt you, the people who criticize you, the people who try to dim your light, are absolutely terrified of your silence. Let me start by telling you something personal. There was a time in my life when I thought I had to prove myself to everyone, every single person who doubted me, every single voice that said I wasn't good enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't talented enough. I felt like I owed them an explanation. I felt like I had to defend myself, justify my choices, make them understand why I deserved to be where I was. And you know what happened? I exhausted myself. I drained every ounce of my energy trying to convince people who had already made up their minds about me. I was fighting battles that weren't even mine to fight. And then something shifted. I realized something profound. When you're constantly explaining yourself, constantly defending your choices, constantly trying to prove your worth to people who don't want to see it, you're actually feeding their ego. You're giving them exactly what they want. Your attention, your energy, your power. Because here's the truth that nobody tells you: people who criticize you, people who doubt you, people who try to bring you down, they don't actually want you to fail because they hate you. They want you to fail because your success forces them to confront their own limitations. Your progress reminds them of their stagnation. Your courage highlights their fear. Think about it. When was the last time someone who was truly happy, truly fulfilled, truly confident in their own path tried to tear you down? Never. Because people who are busy building their own dreams don't have time to criticize yours. The person who mocks your ambition is the person who gave up on theirs. The person who laughs at your failure is the person who's too afraid to try. The person who questions your worth is the person who doesn't see their own. I remember when I first decided to move to America to try to make it in Hollywood. People laughed. Not just strangers, but people I knew. People I thought cared about me. They said things like, "Do you know how many people try to make it there? What makes you think you're special?" They said, "You're already successful here. Why would you risk everything?" They said, "You're going to fail, and when you do, don't come crying back." And for a moment, just a brief moment, I almost believed them. I almost let their fear become my reality. But then I made a decision. I decided to stop talking and start doing. I stopped explaining my dreams to people who were determined to misunderstand them. I stopped defending my choices to people who would criticize them no matter what. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who would never be satisfied. And I started focusing all of that energy, all of that power, all of that determination on actually achieving what I set out to do. And here's what happened. My silence became deafening. Every time someone expected me to react, to defend myself, to engage in their negativity, I didn't. I just kept working. I kept pushing. I kept believing. And slowly, my results started speaking louder than their words ever could. My success became the only response they needed. And suddenly, the same people who doubted me, who laughed at me, who told me I would fail, they were the ones who felt small. Not because I made them feel that way, but because their own ego couldn't handle the fact that I proved them wrong without ever saying a word. This is the power of silence that I want you to understand today. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not giving up. Silence is the ultimate power move. Because when you stop reacting to negativity, when you stop engaging with people who don't deserve your energy, you take away their power over you. You reclaim your narrative. You become untouchable. Let me tell you about a moment that changed everything for me. I was at an event early in my career in Hollywood, and someone very publicly, very deliberately tried to humiliate me. They made a comment about my accent, about where I came from, implying that I didn't belong in that room. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how I would react. The old me would have fired back immediately. The old me would have defended myself, explained my credentials, proved my worth. But I had learned something by then. I had learned that engagement is agreement. When you engage with negativity, you're agreeing that it deserves your attention. When you respond to pettiness, you're lowering yourself to that level. So I did something different. I smiled. I looked that person directly in the eye and I said nothing. Not a single word. And I walked away, not in defeat, but in absolute confidence, because I knew something they didn't. I knew that my work would speak for itself. I knew that in 5 years, they would be a footnote in my story while I would be writing chapters they couldn't even imagine. And you know what? I was right. That person's name doesn't even come up anymore. But here I am talking to you, having built a career that speaks for itself. That's the thing about silence. It's not about being passive. It's about being selective. It's about understanding that not every comment deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves your attention, and not every person deserves access to your energy. Your silence is your boundary. It's your way of saying, you don't get to affect my peace. You don't get to distract me from my purpose. You don't get to rent space in my head. I want you to think about the people in your life right now who drain you. The ones who constantly question your decisions. The ones who always have something negative to say. The ones who seem to take pleasure in pointing out your flaws, your mistakes, your shortcomings. Now I want you to ask yourself, what are you getting from engaging with them? Are they adding value to your life? Are they helping you grow? Are they supporting your dreams? Or are they just filling their own void by emptying yours? Here's a story I love. There was a farmer who had a donkey. One day, the donkey fell into a well. The farmer heard the donkey crying and came to assess the situation. The well was deep, and the farmer decided that neither the donkey nor the well was worth saving. So he called his neighbors, and they all started shoveling dirt into the well to bury the donkey. At first, the donkey panicked. It cried louder as the dirt hit its back. But then something amazing happened. The donkey realized something. With every shovel of dirt that fell on its back, it could shake it off and step up. Shake it off and step up. And that's exactly what it did. No matter how much dirt they threw on it, the donkey just shook it off and stepped up. And eventually, to everyone's amazement, the donkey stepped up over the edge of the well and walked away. This is your life. People are going to throw dirt on you. They're going to try to bury you with their negativity, their doubt, their criticism, and you have two choices. You can let that dirt bury you, or you can shake it off and step up. You can let their words define you, or you can use them as stepping stones to rise higher. And the most powerful way to shake off that dirt is through silence. When you stop reacting, when you stop defending, when you stop explaining, you take away their power to bury you. You transform their negativity into your elevation. But let's be clear about something. Silence doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. Silence doesn't mean the criticism doesn't hurt. Silence doesn't mean you don't have emotions. I've cried. I've been angry. I've felt the sting of rejection and the weight of doubt. But here's what I learned. Your feelings are valid, but your reaction is your choice. You can feel hurt and still choose not to engage. You can feel angry and still choose to channel that energy into your work instead of into a conflict. You can acknowledge the pain without letting it control your behavior. There's a quote I love by Marcus Aurelius. He said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Think about that. The best revenge is not to tear them down. It's not to expose them. It's not to get even. The best revenge is to become so much better, so much stronger, so much more successful than they ever imagined, that their opinion becomes irrelevant. And you do that through silence and action. You do that by refusing to engage in their game and instead focusing on playing your own. I've seen this principle work in every area of life. In business, the entrepreneurs who spend all their time responding to critics are the ones who never get ahead. The ones who succeed are the ones who put their heads down and build. In relationships, the people who constantly feel the need to prove their worth to their partner are the ones who lose themselves. The ones who thrive are the ones who know their value and don't need constant validation. In personal growth, the people who spend all their energy defending their past mistakes are the ones who repeat them. The ones who transform are the ones who learn, adapt, and move forward without looking back for approval. Let me tell you about a woman I met a few years ago. She had a dream of starting her own business, but everyone around her told her it was a bad idea. Her family said she should get a stable job. Her friends said she didn't have what it takes. Her ex-partner told her she would fail just like she failed at everything else. And for months, she tried to convince them. She made presentations to her family showing them her business plan. She argued with her friends, trying to prove her capabilities. She sent long messages to her ex explaining why he was wrong about her. And during all that time, her business idea remained just that, an idea. Then one day, she stopped. She stopped trying to convince anyone. She stopped defending her dream. She stopped seeking permission from people who would never give it. And she started working, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. She stopped posting about her plans on social media. She stopped talking about what she was going to do. She just did it. And 18 months later, her business was thriving. She was making more money than she ever had in her stable job. She was fulfilled, confident, and happy. And those same people who doubted her, some of them apologized. Some of them asked for advice. And some of them still found reasons to criticize. But here's the beautiful part. She didn't need their apology. She didn't need their validation. And she certainly didn't need to respond to their continued criticism. Her success was her only statement. This is what I mean when I say your silence will destroy their ego. Because an ego thrives on engagement. An ego needs your reaction to survive. When someone criticizes you and you respond emotionally, you're feeding their ego. You're confirming that they have power over you. You're showing them that their words can affect your state of being. But when you meet their criticism with silence, when you meet their doubt with unwavering focus on your goals, when you meet their negativity with unshakable confidence in yourself, their ego has nothing to feed on. It withers. It shrinks. And eventually it becomes irrelevant. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Silence doesn't just destroy their ego, it strengthens yours. Real confidence doesn't need to defend itself. Real strength doesn't need to prove itself. Real success doesn't need to announce itself. When you learn to be silent in the face of criticism, you're not just refusing to engage with them. You're building an unshakable foundation within yourself. You're training yourself to find validation from within rather than from without. You're teaching yourself that your worth is not determined by their opinion. I remember reading about Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. People don't know this, but he was cut from his high school basketball team. Can you imagine? The greatest player to ever play the game was told he wasn't good enough for his high school team. And you know what he did? He didn't argue with the coach. He didn't complain to everyone about how unfair it was. He didn't quit basketball in anger. He went home and he practiced, hour after hour, day after day. He let his silence speak. And when he came back the next year, he made the team. And then he made history. He used that rejection as fuel, not as a topic of debate. This is the mindset I want you to adopt. When someone doubts you, don't waste your energy trying to change their mind. Change your reality. When someone criticizes you, don't waste your words defending yourself. Let your results defend you. When someone underestimates you, don't waste your time trying to make them see your potential. Just reach it. Because here's the truth, people's opinions about you are based on their limitations, not yours. Their doubt comes from their fear, not your capabilities. Their criticism stems from their insecurity, not your inadequacy. There's a concept in psychology called projection. It means that people often project their own fears, insecurities, and limitations onto others. When someone tells you that you can't do something, what they're really saying is that they couldn't do it, or they're afraid they couldn't do it, so they assume you can't either. When someone criticizes your ambition, what they're really revealing is their own lack of ambition. When someone mocks your failure, what they're really showing is their own fear of trying. Once you understand this, criticism becomes less about you and more about them. And when you realize it's about them, engaging with it becomes pointless. Let me share something vulnerable with me. There have been times in my career when I've doubted myself, times when the criticism got so loud that I almost believed it, Times when I wondered if maybe they were right, maybe I didn't belong, maybe I wasn't good enough. And in those moments, the temptation to defend myself, to prove them wrong through arguments and explanations was overwhelming. But I learned something crucial in those dark moments. The more time you spend defending your worth, the less time you spend building it. The more energy you invest in arguing with critics, the less energy you have for creating results. So I developed a practice. Every time someone criticized me, every time someone doubted me, every time someone tried to tear me down, I would write it down, not to dwell on it, but to acknowledge it. And then I would ask myself one question: will engaging with this help me reach my goals? 9 times out of 10, the answer was no. And so I would close that notebook and I would go back to work. I would let my work be my response. I would let my progress be my rebuttal. I would let my success be my revenge. And here's what's beautiful about this approach. When you stop engaging with negativity, you free up so much mental and emotional space. You suddenly have so much more energy for the things that actually matter. The people who criticize, you want to occupy your mind. They want you to think about their words, replay them over and over, lose sleep over them. Let them affect your confidence. But when you choose silence, when you choose not to engage, you're essentially saying, you don't get to live in my head rent-free. This space is reserved for my dreams, my goals, my growth. I want to talk about social media for a moment, because this is where so many people struggle with silence. In today's world, everyone has a platform, everyone has an opinion, and everyone feels entitled to share that opinion, often without any filter, any empathy, or any consequence. I've had people I've never met write things about me that would break some people. I've had strangers analyze my choices, criticize my appearance, question my integrity, and create entire narratives about who I am based on nothing but their own projections. And you know what the hardest part is? The temptation to respond, the temptation to correct the record, the temptation to defend yourself against lies and misconceptions. But here's what I've learned about social media. Engaging with negativity on a public platform is like wrestling with a pig. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. When you respond to a hateful comment, you give it visibility. When you engage with a troll, you give them exactly what they want: your attention, your emotion, your power. The most powerful thing you can do on social media is the same thing you should do in real life. Ignore what doesn't serve you, block what's toxic, and focus on what matters. There's this phenomenon I've noticed. When I don't respond to negativity, when I stay silent in the face of criticism, something interesting happens. My supporters rally, people who believe in me, people who see my worth, people who understand my journey. They speak up, and their voices drown out the negativity without me having to say a single word. This taught me another important lesson. Your tribe will defend you if you're worth defending. You don't need to fight every battle yourself. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is stay silent and let your work, your character, and your supporters speak for you. But silence doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. Silence doesn't mean you accept mistreatment. Silence doesn't mean you don't stand up for yourself. There's a difference between strategic silence and being a doormat. Strategic silence means you don't engage with people who don't deserve your energy. It means you don't explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It means you don't argue with people who have already made up their minds. But it doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't remove toxic people from your life. It doesn't mean you don't stand up for your values. I think about Mahatma Gandhi, who used silence as a weapon. He didn't argue with the British Empire. He didn't try to convince them with words why India deserved independence. He acted. He organized. He led through example. His silence was powerful not because he had nothing to say, but because his actions spoke louder than any words could. He understood that arguing with oppressors gives them legitimacy. Instead, he focused on building the movement, empowering the people, and creating change through action rather than debate. This is the level of strategic thinking I want you to bring to your own life. Stop arguing about your worth and start demonstrating it. Stop defending your dreams and start achieving them. Stop explaining your vision to people who can't see it and start surrounding yourself with people who share it. Because here's another truth. The right people don't need convincing. The right opportunities don't require you to beg. The right path doesn't demand that you explain yourself at every turn. I've had people in my life who believed in me before I believed in myself. People who saw potential in me when I could only see my limitations. People who supported my dreams when the world was telling me to be realistic. And you know what those people had in common? They never needed me to convince them. They never needed me to prove myself. They just supported. They just showed up. Those are the people you should be having conversations with. Those are the people who deserve your energy, your vulnerability, your time. And then there are the other people, the ones who will never be satisfied no matter what you achieve. You could win an Oscar, and they'd say it was luck. You could build a successful business, and they'd say you had unfair advantages. You could transform your life, and they'd find some reason why it doesn't count. These people don't want to see you succeed because your success threatens their excuses. Your progress forces them to confront their own lack of it. And no amount of explaining, defending, or proving will change their minds because their opinion was never really about you in the first place. So stop trying. Stop wasting your breath on people who are determined not to hear you. Stop wasting your energy on people who are invested in your failure. Stop wasting your time on people who will twist your words no matter how clearly you speak them. Your silence will say more to them than your words ever could. Your success will sting them more than any comeback. Your happiness will bother them more than any argument. Let me tell you about a concept I call the echo chamber of ego. When someone criticizes you and you respond, you create an echo. Your response echoes back. They respond to your response, you respond to their response, and before you know it, you're trapped in this endless cycle of back and forth that goes nowhere. Each exchange feeds both egos, yours and theirs. But here's the thing, an echo needs sound to exist. When you go silent, when you refuse to make that initial sound, there's nothing to echo, the chamber becomes empty, the ego has nothing to feed on, and eventually it starves. This is why silence is so powerful. It breaks the cycle, it ends the game, it refuses to participate in the drama, and when you consistently refuse to participate, something magical happens. You start to become immune to criticism, not because you're arrogant or because you think you're perfect, but because you've trained yourself to find your validation internally rather than externally. You've learned that your worth is not up for debate. You've understood that their opinion is just that, an opinion, not a fact. I want to share a personal practice that has helped me tremendously. Every morning, before I check my phone, before I look at any messages or comments or news, I spend 10 minutes reminding myself who I am, not who the world thinks I am, not who the media portrays me to be, not who the critics claim I am, but who I know I am at my core. I remind myself of my values. I remind myself of my goals. I remind myself of how far I've come. And I set an intention for the day to not let anyone's opinion of me become more important than my own opinion of me. This practice has been revolutionary because it anchors me, it centers me. It reminds me that I am the author of my story, not the critics, not the doubters, not the people who have never walked in my shoes. And when you're anchored in your own truth, when you're centered in your own worth, other people's words lose their power. They become background noise. They become irrelevant. And your silence becomes effortless because you're not suppressing a reaction. You're genuinely unbothered. But I also want to acknowledge something important. Choosing silence is hard. It's hard because we're human. We have egos too. We want to be understood. We want to be seen. We want to correct misconceptions. We want justice. We want vindication. These are natural human desires. So when I talk about silence, I'm not talking about suppressing your humanity. I'm talking about channeling it differently. Instead of channeling your need to be understood into arguments with people who won't understand, channel it into conversations with people who already do. Instead of channeling your need for vindication into defending yourself to critics, channel it into achieving results that vindicate you automatically. There's a story about Buddha that I find incredibly powerful. One day, a man came to Buddha and started insulting him. He hurled abuse after abuse, trying to get a reaction. Buddha just sat there calmly, listening. When the man finally finished, Buddha asked him a simple question. If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, who does the gift belong to? The man thought for a moment and said, "It belongs to the person who offered it." Buddha smiled and said, "That is correct. I do not accept your insults, so they remain with you." This is the power of silence. When someone offers you negativity and you refuse to accept it, it stays with them. Their criticism, their doubt, their hate, it doesn't become your burden unless you pick it up. Every time you react, you're picking up their gift of negativity. Every time you engage, you're accepting their offering. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to participate, you're essentially returning their gift to sender. You're saying, "This is yours, not mine. I don't accept it." Now, I know some of you are thinking, but what if they're right? What if their criticism is valid? What if I do need to change? And this is a fair question. Here's the thing. There's a difference between constructive feedback and destructive criticism. Constructive feedback comes from a place of love, support, and genuine desire to help you grow. It's specific, it's actionable, and it's delivered with respect. Destructive criticism comes from a place of ego, jealousy, or insecurity. It's vague, it's meant to hurt, and it's delivered with contempt. Learn to tell the difference. When someone who loves you, who has proven their support for you, who has your best interests at heart, gives you feedback, listen. Even if it's hard to hear, even if it stings, because that person has earned the right to speak into your life. They've demonstrated through their actions that they want to see you succeed. Their feedback, even when it's critical, comes from a place of wanting to help you improve, not wanting to tear you down. But when someone who has never supported you, who has a history of negativity toward you, who seems to take pleasure in your struggles, gives you criticism, that's when you employ strategic silence. Because their words aren't meant to build you up. They're meant to keep you down. I've had mentors in my life who have given me tough feedback. People who told me I needed to work on my craft. People who pointed out my weaknesses. People who pushed me to be better. And I listened to them. I didn't always like what they said, but I respected their perspective because I knew it came from a place of wanting to see me succeed. And that feedback made me better. It made me stronger. It made me more skilled. But I've also had critics who disguised their hate as concern, their jealousy as advice, their insecurity as wisdom. And learning to distinguish between the two was one of the most important lessons of my life. Here's a good rule of thumb. If the feedback makes you want to be better, it's probably constructive. If it makes you want to quit, it's probably destructive. If the person giving you the feedback has achieved what you're trying to achieve or has demonstrated genuine support for you, listen. If they haven't and they're just criticizing from the sidelines, employ silence. Your energy is limited. Your time is precious. Your mental space is sacred. Protect it fiercely. Let me tell you about a turning point in my career. I was working on a project that I believed in deeply, but the reviews were mixed. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. And the ones who hated it were very vocal. They wrote articles. They posted on social media. They created content tearing apart my work. And for a few days, I was devastated. I read every negative review. I internalized every criticism. I questioned whether I had made a huge mistake. But then I did something different. I read the positive reviews. I looked at the messages from people whose lives were touched by the work. I remembered why I created the project in the first place, not to please critics, but to tell a story that mattered to me. And I made a decision. I stopped reading the negative reviews. I stopped checking what the critics were saying. I stopped giving my energy to people who were determined to hate my work no matter what. And I focused on the people who got it, who appreciated it, who were moved by it. And you know what? The project succeeded, not because the critics changed their minds, but because I stopped letting their opinions dictate my actions. I stopped letting their voices drown out the voices that mattered. I stopped letting their ego affect my purpose. This brings me to another crucial point. Your silence should be accompanied by relentless action. Silence alone is not enough. If you're silent, but you're also stagnant, you're just passive. But when your silence is accompanied by focused, determined, consistent action toward your goals, it becomes powerful. It becomes purposeful. It becomes transformative. The combination of silence and action is unstoppable. While they're talking, you're doing. While they're criticizing, you're creating. While they're doubting, you're achieving. Think about the most successful people you know. How often do you see them engaging with critics? How often do you see them defending themselves on social media? How often do you see them trying to prove their worth through arguments? Rarely, if ever. Because they've learned what I'm teaching you today. That success is the best response. That results speak louder than words. That your time is better spent building than defending. I remember having a conversation with someone I deeply admire, someone who has built an incredible career and an incredible life. I asked them how they deal with criticism, with doubt, with people who try to bring them down. And their answer was simple: I don't. I simply don't deal with it. I acknowledge that it exists, and then I go back to work. Because at the end of the day, my goals are more important than their opinions. My dreams are more valuable than their doubts. My peace is more precious than their validation. That conversation changed something in me. It made me realize that dealing with criticism, engaging with negativity, responding to doubt, these things were optional. I had been treating them as mandatory, as something I had to do, as a responsibility. But they're not. They're a choice. And choosing not to engage is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength. It's self-preservation. It's strategic brilliance. So today, I want you to make a commitment. I want you to commit to protecting your energy like it's the most valuable resource you have, because it is. I want you to commit to surrounding yourself with people who build you up rather than tear you down. I want you to commit to letting your work speak for itself rather than feeling the need to defend it constantly. I want you to commit to finding your validation from within rather than seeking it from without. I want you to commit to strategic silence as your superpower, because here's what's going to happen when you do this. First, you're going to feel lighter. All that energy you were spending on defending, explaining, proving, that energy gets freed up. You suddenly have so much more mental and emotional capacity for the things that actually matter. Second, you're going to become more focused. When you're not distracted by critics and doubters, you can zero in on your goals with laser-like precision. Third, you're going to build genuine confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from external validation, but the real confidence that comes from knowing your worth regardless of what anyone else thinks. And fourth, and this is the most beautiful part, you're going to start attracting different energy. When you stop engaging with negativity, when you stop lowering your vibration to match the critics, when you maintain your peace and your focus, you start attracting people and opportunities that match that higher vibration. Like attracts like. When you operate from a place of confidence, security, and purpose, you attract others who operate from that same place. Your circle elevates. Your opportunities expand, your life transforms. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you this is easy. It's not. There will be days when staying silent feels impossible. There will be moments when you want to scream, to defend yourself, to set the record straight. There will be times when the criticism cuts so deep that silence feels like defeat. And in those moments, I want you to remember this: your silence is not about them. It's about you. It's about protecting your peace. It's about preserving your energy. It's about staying true to your path, regardless of who's watching, who's judging, who's criticizing. Remember that farmer's donkey I told you about. Every shovel of dirt that landed on its back could have buried it. But instead, the donkey used each shovel as a step up. That's what your silence does. It transforms every criticism, every doubt, every attempt to bury you into a step up. But only if you refuse to be buried. Only if you shake it off and step up. Only if you turn their negativity into your elevation. I want to leave you with this. You are not on this earth to prove yourself to anyone. You are not here to convince people of your worth. You are not here to defend your dreams to those who lack the vision to see them. You are here to live your truth, to pursue your purpose, to become the best version of yourself. And that journey requires all of your energy, all of your focus, all of your commitment. Don't waste it on people who don't deserve it. Don't dilute it by engaging with critics who will never be satisfied. Don't compromise it by seeking validation from those who are incapable of giving it. Your silence is your power. Use it strategically. Use it intentionally. Use it to protect your peace, preserve your energy, and propel yourself forward. Let your results be your response. Let your success be your revenge. Let your happiness be your ultimate victory. Because at the end of the day, the best way to destroy someone's ego is not to engage with it at all. It's to become so focused on your own growth, so committed to your own goals, so secure in your own worth that their opinion becomes background noise. And that, my friends, is the most powerful speech I can give you today. Your silence will destroy their ego because your silence says, "You don't matter enough to affect my peace." Your silence says, "I'm too busy building my dream to engage with your doubt." Your silence says, "Your opinion of me is none of my business." And that complete and total indifference to their criticism while you're simultaneously crushing your goals, that is what truly destroys an ego. Because an ego thrives on attention, and you're refusing to give it any. So go out there and be silent. Be strategically, powerfully, intentionally silent, and let your work, your progress, your transformation speak the loudest. Thank you.